we're going to get a quick overview of MongoDB. And I'm at the mongodb.com website. So this is the homepage. This is what you'll see when you get here. And you can see they're promoting MongoDB Atlas, which is the cloud version of MongoDB, which is what we'll be using. So to get an idea of how MongoDB works, which is unlike a relational database, we're going to go into the resources and then to architecture. And we're just going to use the documentation and the graphics that they have on the website to go through, and I'll quickly explain some of the main differences with a relational database like MySQLite or Microsoft SQL Server, for example. So scrolling down, we come to some of the main points about MongoDB, the advantages of it. So we have the flexibility. It's very scalable and high performance, always on. So that's a big thing. And it's because it uses a technique called sharding, which is similar to in relational database, maybe replications, but it's done automatically. So it's built into the database. It's not something you have to worry about. There's also an expressive query language, and we're going to see how the blocks are put together for the MongoDB engine, the query language, and then how applications attach to it. And there's a number of other advantages they have listed here. So continuing to scroll down, we'll get into some of the architecture of how it's put together. So this is maybe what you might refer to as a schema, but not a traditional schema in the sense of relational database. And by the way, if you looked at these in code, they would be JSON, and instead of columns and rows, you basically have JSON and everything's moved around like that. We're not going to be interacting directly with MongoDB, which means we don't have to worry about getting involved with the technicals of how to use the query language, because we'll be using Mongoose and just staying within JavaScript. But still, it's good to know what's behind the scenes with MongoDB, what's actually going on with Mongo. So the way that they've got it structured here, you've got an article, and then inside the article is the comment tag category. And this is just a structure that they've chosen as an example. So if we look at this, we have data as documents. So the document really is the cornerstone of how data is moved around. You can see this key sentence here: MongoDB documents tend to have all data for a given record. So rather than a row for the record, you've got this document. And in contrast to a relational database, where the information for a given record is usually spread across many tables. And so again, they put together this little structure here for what things may look like for a blog. And these can keep getting nested. So this would be JSON, this article, and then inside the article JSON would be this comment, which is also JSON, and the comment may have sub-comments or replies to the comment. Those can be JSON nested inside the JSON. You can just keep going that way, and that's how everything is structured. So as we continue on down, we can see here a few of the differences with MongoDB versus a relational database. And then further down, we have the query model, and they talk about the data visualization. So again, we're not going to be logging in to the MongoDB website, interacting with it that way, but I do want to point out the query model. So if we scroll on down, they've got a great graphic of how that is structured with the engine as well. And one key thing here, I mentioned sharding earlier. So what you have built into MongoDB are the shards, which can be spread across different servers. And these can be low-cost servers. They don't have to be high performance. And that's how MongoDB gets its performance, is through this sharding technique, which again is automatic. And so scrolling on down, here we are with the query language, and then we have the data model that sits under it. And you can see all the ancillary components of MongoDB that are around this. This document goes into a lot of detail about the security, about the management, but for us, our application would be sitting up here in this top row. So we would go through the query language, and then you have the processing of everything that is done by the data model. So what we do initially is, for our sharding to take effect, is we go in, create an account on MongoDB Atlas, and then we create a project. And in the project, you create a cluster. The cluster is basically the deployment of the database, and that sets up the sharding for the database as well. So I'll show you how to do that in the next lesson. We'll go in and create the MongoDB account and then set up the project. Once that's done, you'll have a connection string that you can use inside of the project to actually connect the application we're building with our MongoDB Atlas cloud storage as well. I am at mongodb.com. We're going to see how now to set up a MongoDB Atlas account. So on the home page here, you can go ahead and click Start Free. That should go into the account setup. But in case they change this out at some point, you can go to Cloud, and MongoDB Atlas is right here. This is free, by the way, or at least the one we're going to use is free. So you can click Get Started for free. You'll fill all of this out, and then you'll be into your account. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and sign in and show you what it looks like on the back end and how to set up our project and also the cluster. Okay, so I am logged on now. You can see I've got a cluster here. And if I back out of this a little bit, I've got project here, and under my projects is my cluster. So you're not likely to see the cluster option immediately. So for that, you'd have to create a project. So you're going to create an organization as well. And you can see here, I've got mine just called my org. And I created a project. So that's going to be one of the things. You'll not have a project initially. So what you're going to want to do is click New Project here. Just go ahead and fill that out, whatever you might want. Once the project is done, you'll go into the project. So I'm clicking here and going into my project. And you can click Build a New Cluster. That will create your new cluster. So this is mine. This is the name that it has. And that will be set up at that point. And if I click on Connect, go in here, you're going to want to add your IP to the whitelist, and then you're also going to want to get the connection string. So you'll want to, down here, connect your application, and we'll go back and we'll look at this as well. And we're going to be using the driver for the 3.4. So if I click on that, I'm using driver 3.4 earlier. That is the connection string. You can just click copy, and that will copy it out. So we'll come back to this whenever we reach this point, but that's just basically all you're going to have to do inside of MongoDB. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and go over here to users. You'll likely want at least one user. And if I click on this user here, we can see this is the project owner. So this user here is going to be a user that you'll get whenever you create your organization and your project. The users that we're going to have in the app, we're actually going to be creating through the API, so we don't need to manually create any of those users. But that is the quick overview of the account, how to get your project and your cluster going. So there's the order of that. You create the organization, you just give it a name basically. That's going to happen after you log on. Then from the organization is the project. So you create a project. And then once you have that, you're able to build a cluster is how that works. Rather than create a cluster, you actually build that cluster. And those are the three components in the account that you'll need. And then your Atlas storage will be set up at that point.